entitled cheating father, who neglected and abused me all my life with his new wife, his affair partner, feels he is entitled to the house I inherited from my grandparents, who actually cared for me. He demanded that I let him and his spoiled family live there, so I refused, causing them to become homeless. Now, everyone calls me an arsehole for showing resentment towards old people. I 30F and my father 64M have historically had a rocky relationship. My parents divorced when I was 5, and he married the woman he cheated on my mother with. I was an only child, and she had 4 kids from a previous marriage. During my childhood years, I spent most of the allocated time dedicated to my father in the divorce with my paternal grandparents. Every 2 weeks and 42 days in the summer. They lived in a different state. I cherished the time I had with them, and they would always go to bat for me. There was some tension caused early in my dad's new marriage due to my stepmother demanding that my GPs go back to the store one Christmas and get an equal amount of gifts for all of her children, even taking some from me gifting to her youngest. I spent many times waiting on my mom's sofa waiting for my dad to pick me up, and he never did. I would later find out he was on family vacations with his new family. I could spend all day telling Cinderella stories, but I need to keep focus on this story. My grandparents picked up his slack. We spent summers learning how to make baskets, gardening, camping, and various other activities. Their home was a second home to me. When I was 13, I went to go live with my dad after some methodical brainwashing, and I then would rarely see my GPs. My GM would call, and they would ignore it. It would hurt my heart to see it on the caller ID, knowing they were just on the other line. But my dad and SM would not allow it, unless I sat at a table with them while on a call. Fast forward to the summer of my freshman year. We went to visit my dad's side of the family. On the last night, my aunt and uncle who lived next door asked if I could stay the night with my cousins. My SM wanted her youngest daughter to be included. They declined because my SS was a thief. A fight ensued in the front yard that night, resulting in physical altercations. My stepmother shoved my 74-year-old pap to the ground. He had a hip replacement in the 90s and already had a stiff walk. I was utterly terrified and distraught. As the chaos ensued, I packed my belongings because they said we were leaving. I vowed then that this would be the last straw and I would never forgive them. We missed their 50th wedding anniversary because my stepmom was still upset over what his family did to her that night. The next spring my pap had a stroke, and it was never the same. The man that helped raise me during his son's shortcoming didn't remember my name. He died in 2014. Later, I left home when I was 18 to go to college, where I met my husband. He has been my rock and helped when my dad throws fits in the last few years when he doesn't get his way. He has shown me nothing but unconditional love and support, and is the father to our child. Mine never could muster to be. I go no contact with dad every couple years because of his behavior. There is an old saying that time heals all wounds, but I don't believe that to always be true. I maintained a relationship with my mammy paternal grandmother until her death in December. She was a cheeky one who left notes for us to find after death. This woman never forgot a thing when she felt slighted. That was also reflected in her will. I inherit the house that has been deeded to me since 2001. My dad knew they would give it to me, but I honestly think he thought he had a chance of fighting me for it. Since 2012, he and my SM have been living in an RV that is now starting to fall apart. He is retired military and has no savings. Right after the funeral, he stashed his belongings in closets. I discovered this after I changed the locks and added cameras, as I live out of state and wanted security for the home before I sell my house and move into my childhood home. I put his stuff and what was owed to him in storage, and my uncle gave him the keys. After learning this, he's been furious. My stepbrothers keep reaching out, telling me I'm heartless for keeping him out of his parents' home. He called crying, and I coldly told him if they wanted him to have it, they would have left it to him. I also told him he should have treated his parents better when they were alive. I have the deed in my hands, and there's nothing left for him to do about it. The estate is almost settled, and what land he does get will also have my name on the deed. I would rather share my childhood home with my daughter and all the whimsical things it had to offer. Even if my dad ends up homeless. Update. I promised an update. It's taking me a long time to really sit down and gather my thoughts to update, or rather just really take in the reality of my situation. It's taken me 31 years to really see beyond the rose-tinted glasses of the relationship I thought I had with my father. I did cancel his flight. He did not help us move, but I did end up engaging with him to keep the peace. Quick recap. I inherited my grandparents' home. Father and stepmother wanted to move in. I said no. Dad then decides to leave the evil stepmother and reconcile. Wanted to temporarily move in with us. We said no. He was insisting on helping us move, and we ultimately said no. We are essentially estranged, and he's never really been a parent to me. Would rather love and bond with my 3 stepmothers and all their children than his only child and grandchild. I previously entertained reconciliation, only to be strongly dissuaded by my extended family and Reddit. A week before making the move, he did come to Kentucky and leave my stepmother, as he had said. How he did it was cowardly. She was doing laundry on their last day in Texas at their RV, and he got in her vehicle and split back to Georgia, leaving her without transportation. Her children are angry. Once he got to their RV in Georgia, he parked the car, packed his truck and trailer, and headed to Kentucky. He spent a week here on his property next to my inherited home. I inherited his parents' house. For those that do not recall, he was essentially camping in a small trailer. He would haul stuff in for flea markets and gun shows. He asked if he could use my water hose so he could shower, and I agreed. I have cameras outside, so I thought, what could it hurt? Well, here's where I was wrong. I then get a call from him that water is pouring from under the house. I told him to shut the water off. The house has been having leaks since I took possession, as it's got 60-year-old plumbing that will be replaced with the sale of my home. I had my uncle come to confirm, and then scheduled a plumber to come look at what needed to be done. This was just 5 days before we would get there with a moving truck from Florida to Kai. A pipe had split under the sink, and the water heater had busted during the winter. During this time, a storm came through and the power went out. He found a key I had in a flower pot for the plumber and went into my home. When we got there, he told us he sprayed the yard for ticks, did pest control, and also cleaned and sprayed for pests inside the home. I was livid. I didn't react angrily because, at the time, it felt weird. I was questioning whether I was wrong, and he was actually wanting to be a dad to me after all this time. So I let it go. That illusion has since passed. We've been here since mid-June, and now I've discovered he's robbed us blind. He's denied it all, of course. Tape had been removed from an old chimney hole assuming looking for money, and green dishware has been stolen and put on consignment in town and at another local place 40 minutes away. Anytime we have a subcontractor out to give bids on the remodel, he just shows up and tries to hijack the situation. He talked to me like I'm stupid in front of my husband. That surprisingly didn't go well. My husband is as docile as it comes, but that was the straw that broke his silence in all this. My dad didn't take kindly to my husband telling him he needed to mind his own business and be respectful to his wife. He's now staying at one of his cousins in an RV. He's still moving forward with his plans to put a tiny home on the land that is nestled between me and my uncle. My extended family tends to avoid him like the plague, even with his repeated efforts to enter the fold. He showed up to their home on the 4th of July with a lawn chair to see fireworks uninvited, and they didn't ask him to leave. Sometime in July, we noticed my dad had messed with the propane heater. It no longer had the pilot light on, and the dial had been moved to 1, which is on the opposite side of the dial as the pilot setting. Either that was incompetence, or he was playing with fate with our lives. His granddaughter's life. He, of course, denied it. I am under the impression we are all in fear of his retaliation. My husband has no such fears and keeps threatening to go into the consignment that has my stolen glassware and making a scene. Honestly, I'm at the point that I'm just going to let my husband deal with him. I'm no longer emotionally exhausted and just annoyed. He shows up randomly with food, which I immediately throw away. The last one had a note on it for my daughter. I wish I had a happier update, but this is what it is. We close on the sale of our home next week and start remodeling soon. I've let my contractors know the situation, and he's not to be on the property. I feel bad having them in the situation. I'm worried he will vandalize the house my grandparents left me while we are in our rental. If I end up as a news story, know it's not a mystery, and know who is responsible.